Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Musicast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And once again, we are starting the show with questions for me. Questions for Tim. Now, Joy has told me that she's been collating these questions from many sources, so I'm apprehensive and maybe excited about what's going to happen.
So we got 3 questions, 2 from outside sources and 1 from me that is going to lead Tim straight into the topic for the night. So the first one comes from Jillian, for those who don't know. She is a I don't know. She's listened to us for a long time. She said, this one was very specific, Tim, and you're the only person who could give us the best answer. Who would win in a fight between Flash Gordon and Michael Knight?
Well, you see, Michael Knight does have Kit at his disposal, and he has all the resources of the Foundation for Law and Government. He has Bonnie or April. I mean, Kit has a molecular bonded shell. Kit also has a third stage aquatic synthesizer, can go on water if necessary. And, you know, Kit and Michael Knight have fought many evil people who are above the law, in fact. But the thing is, you have to know about Flash Gordon. He's the savior of the universe.
I mean, that is true. And it literally says it like 7 times in the song.
Yeah, and he defeated Ming the Merciless.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But equally, Flash Gordon was just a dumb football player. But he was the savior of the universe. So I don't know. I would say if we're going to save the universe and we're defeating Ming, you definitely need Flash. But I think in any other situation, Michael Knight and Kit would prevail. So I would say here on Earth, it has to be Michael Knight and Kit.
I mean, that's fair. I think I agree with that. That was a very well thought out, logical answer, Tim. We appreciate it. To a very logical question that everybody should have to answer at some point.
I mean, I imagine most people are kicking back about now, you know, probably before they listen to the podcast and pondering who would be the best person. And you know, there we are. I'm saying Michael Knight for all those logical reasons. However, I have met Flash Gordon. I've met Sam J. Jones. I thanked him for saving the universe, and he said, "It's cool, man. It's cool." And he's a very tall, very large, imposing gentleman. So I've also met David Hasselhoff, and David Hasselhoff is also a very tall, imposing kind of chap.
Looks tall.
When you're up beside him. So I think if those two had a fist fight in real life, it would be Sam J. Jones.
Lord help us. All right.
Because Michael David Hasselhoff was a football player when he was younger, but he's been an actor his entire life. Sam J. Jones, after the acting thing fell off and before he had a renaissance, as he has recently, he was doing private security guard work. He was taking people down to Mexico and bringing them back. So
he does seem more intimidating and tough.
Yeah, I would say in a fist fight, Sam J. Jones is your man. But in the fictional universes, Michael Knight and Kit.
I love how he sounded like he was ending it, and then he went, but wait a second, there's more.
Important topic. I have to cover all the bases.
So I lied. We're actually good. I've got 2 questions. One comes from an Andy Bradley, and he said, will there ever be a boy born who can swim faster than a shark? I'm guessing he's thinking of evolution. Do you think evolution-wise we would eventually be able to beat out a shark?
I think so. I suppose it depends. If we get to the point where the water levels rise like Waterworld and all the land disappears, I mean, most people wouldn't be around, but people would evolve to live in that watery environment. So if that was the case, I could see boys being born or people being born that could beat a shark. The other thing you have to remember is how fast does a shark swim?
That is what I was thinking, too. And different sharks, I mean, there's different types of sharks, too. Some probably swim faster than others. The other thing is if we are evolving, then the sharks are evolving, too, right?
That is correct.
You could have to keep that in perspective, too, because if we do eventually get faster than the shark, would evolution catch up with us and make sharks faster too? There's a lot of ifs and or buts with this question.
And the other thing you have to consider is, like I said, if all the ice melts and all the land disappears and all the sea levels rise, if most people on Earth will be killed as because of that, the sharks will be eating the people. Now, the sharks wouldn't necessarily have to swim super quick because there's going to be billions of people all in the water and they'd just be having a feast. Now, they will evolve not needing to be so quick.
I don't know what else to say. I mean, I think everything you just said, Tim, is probably the most logical argument to what was a super logical question.
I tell you what, one thing you say about Andy Bradley, he's an amazing guitar player. He's an amazing singer. He writes great songs, but he also asks the best questions.
He really does. And then this one, I wasn't going to ask it, but I just read through it and I have to read it to you. Because it's related to music. Here's our first thing, but also it's just ridiculous. So it's Stephen Lemereau, whatever his last name is. It's the French last name.
Lemereau. Stephen Lemereau.
Okay, I was right. I said it right, but then I was like, that came off the tongue weird. I didn't like it. All right, so I can't believe I'm saying this. If ferrets were used for transporting cables, like to tie them around through tubing and different things like that, at Boeing, specifically at Boeing, do you think there's an opportunity for them in the music industry? And would that make them the smallest roadies ever?
Yeah, I think so. Because if you think like a 747, for example, and that's an aircraft which I think they're actually making the final ones of. But if you take something like a 747, I forget what it is. There's something like 15 miles of cable in a 747 or 20 miles of cable. It's some absurd figure like that.
Why do you and all of your friends seem to know so much about planes? Like, what you guys don't know is I've been on mini Zooms with a lot of these people we're talking about here. And for some reason, planes are one of their big knowledge points.
Well, we all live right by Heathrow Airport.
I mean, that's probably it. Okay, continue.
All right. So you have the Boeing factory in Washington, up in Washington State. So you're making a 747. There's 15, 20 miles of cabling in there. You have your airframe. So obviously a ferret is the obvious option for running cabling, as Stephen says. I mean, there are smaller mammals you could use, but I think a ferret is probably about the optimum size for a mammal because it has enough heft in it. So if it's a large coax cable, an Ethernet cable, or even like some of those big multi-core cables that are used in the avionics, he'd get it in his teeth and he or she can run to the other end of the airframe. They can be trained. It solves a lot of problems in our aircraft manufacture. Now, if you have those teams of trained ferrets in a roadie situation, when you're laying cables on the stage, whether it's like one of the multi-core cables or regular XLR mic cables, that kind of stuff, or even guitar cables, yes, I think it would be useful for that. But the thing is, you have to remember when you're playing music, a lot of that stuff is incredibly heavy. Yeah. So, you would need a lot of ferrets to carry around, say, like a Marshall 4x12 cabinet, or even some of that drummer's hardware. Yeah. Very, very heavy. Or even like one of those cases full of cymbals. They are really heavy. So, yes, trained ferrets would be good as a roadie, but it would simply have to be cabling matters, maybe arranging a set list on the stage, taping things down. But when it comes to those heavy items, speaker cabinets, drum kits, bass amps and stuff, the ferret is not optimum.
Well, there you go, everybody. And we all learned something about ferrets and planes in the last 5 minutes. For some reason, it feels like everybody I talk to that knows Tim knows a lot about planes. I don't know where that comes from, but you guys got it first here. Now, with that being said, this next question leads us right into our topic for the night. And I promise the topic is related to music-ish. Tim, if you were given the option to pick your final meal, what would you choose?
It's hard to say because traditionally I would say McDonald's food because I love it, but I don't eat meat anymore. And I probably wouldn't want to eat that as a final food because I just don't want to do that anymore.
Your conscience would be wrong.
Yeah. I honestly don't know. Maybe a delicious delivery pizza, maybe.
I lean towards pizza too.
Or like a really good quality sandwich, maybe.
I can agree with both those options because
I'm actually gonna say a high quality sandwich.
A high quality sandwich. Okay. So the reason that everybody needs to know that is we are going to talk about 10 artists and what their last meal was before they passed away. These are musicians. And so what I'm going to do, the way this is going to be set up is I'm going to give you the name, kind of just like a 2-second history in case somebody out there didn't know who it was. Then we're going to discuss what the last meal was. And then I picked 1 to 3 songs for each of the artists me and Tim get to discuss. So I just thought that was a little bit different. I don't know how I came upon the article, but I saw something about, musicians and their final, and these aren't people who were like, being electrocuted or anything. They're just people who happened to pass away and they knew what their last meal was. So there you go. All right. Okay. Our first one is Frank Sinatra.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, he's an American singer and actor, nicknamed the chairman of the board and Old Blue Eyes. Sinatra was one of the most popular entertainers of the 40s, 50s, and 60s. He's among the world's best-selling musician and an estimated about 150 million record sales. So pretty sizable amount. Frank Sinatra also, the last thing he ate was a grilled cheese sandwich before he passed away.
I mean, the grilled cheese sandwich is a classic option. I take it he was he on his deathbed in a hospital, or did he just have a grilled cheese sandwich and then sometime later on in the day, or don't we know?
So here's how it went. He really wasn't on his deathbed, but Sinatra was a late riser, often getting out of bed during the early afternoon. His typical day consisted of breakfast, followed by playing with his dogs, then spending time with his friends. He ate a lot of grilled cheese sandwiches, everybody. He ate sandwiches, not sandwiches, while enjoying the confines of his home. So he was at home in Palm Springs. The culinary favorite ended up being so apparently it was just his go-to when he was at home just chilling. As a grilled cheese. On May 14th, 1998, the crooner went about his daily routine, had a grilled cheese sandwich, though he didn't eat the whole thing, so they found part of it. Sinatra, who was in declining health, had a heart attack later that day and died at Cedars Medical Center in L.A. So he was fine, he ate the sandwich, had a heart attack, and then he was at the hospital. So, to be honest, think about that, what I just said. He had his first hits in 1940s, and he passed away in 1998. He'd been around for a while. So the songs I chose were That's Life, Fly Me to the Moon, and Come Fly With Me, which, to be fair, he does talk a lot about flying. I just realized that.
Yeah, maybe he was training ferrets on airframes at Boeing.
Possibly. I will say That's Life is one of those ones that whenever something goes wrong and I'm thinking, that's just the way it goes, I go, that's life. That's what I think of when I think of that song. But he's known for having that really good orchestra behind him, which gives him that kind of larger than life sound. And you said he was given his nickname. How is he connected to that guy that everybody in Britain likes?
Tom Jones?
Yes. What was the connection?
Well, the connection is that Frank Sinatra would often invite celebrities to his Vegas showroom when he was doing gigs there. And it was very common back in those days is if you had a VIP in the audience, you would point it out and you say, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know, Barbara Streisand is in the audience, and she would stand up and wave, that kind of stuff. And Tom Jones was in the audience of a Frank Sinatra concert, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Jones is in the house, and just to let you know, he is the voice.
That's what it was. I knew there was some connection, but it kind of went past me. One thing I thought was interesting while I was researching these songs, Tim, he had so many. I know he liked to do a full string band type situation, full orchestra. There's 17 string members, 17 horn members, the biggest rhythm section I've ever seen on every single one of these songs.
Yeah, it was back in the day of the big band. And certainly when you're a name as big as Frank Sinatra, you can have the size of band that's appropriate for you, which would be a massive band. So he would have strings, he would have horns, he'd have percussion, he'd have the whole thing. Effectively a whole full-on orchestra behind him.
I guess I assumed there was an orchestra, but it just surprised me. Even vocals, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people, 12 people just on backing vocals for this song.
Wouldn't surprise me. And the other good thing about That's Life, my favorite version of that is by David Lee Roth from the Crazy from the Heat EP.
I've heard it. It's actually kind of good, honestly. It's random, but it's good.
Well, it's Diamond Dave. And he was singing in English, not Spanish.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Well, anyway, now I'm thinking about that, and now I'm like, I need to go back and rewatch it because it's been. I kind of forgot that existed. Tim has a good way of bringing up the most random songs that I once heard on YouTube and put in the back of my mind. Maybe he had ferrets carrying his equipment in to start that one.
Well, I'd imagine Frank could have any kind of roadie he wanted: people, elephant, animal, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Well, considering the size of this band, they would have needed a lot of ferrets.
Well, you know, one thing that's interesting about that, though, is that it wouldn't be like a rock band where the money is split between them generally. That kind of situation, those people will be being paid union scale money. So it just speaks to the celebrity that Frank Sinatra had and the money that he must have been generating in order to pay all those musicians at the going rate and have that many people on stage.
That's crazy. That's a lot of people on stage. Yeah, and I mean, you know it, but then when you see it all listed out, it was just surprising because I was looking at this one's for That's Life, but when I looked at like Fly Me to the Moon and the other song, Come Fly With Me, they both had about the same amount of people. Now, whether he was bringing the same people, I didn't pay attention if they were the same names over and over again, or if he was consistently finding different people to perform with him, but you don't really see that very often anymore. I mean, what surprised me is how many cellos were in the string section. I don't really think about cellos like that much in general. But anyway, I digress. So on to the next one. And this is one that everyone is familiar with. But everyone is familiar with the rumor about this person. This is not what happened. It is Mama Cass. And her last meal was, Tim, what's the rumor? Mama Cass, the ham sandwich.
Yes, that's the one. Yes,
there
yes.
it is. I put him on the spot. He's like, I don't know.
It was on the tip of my brain.
So, according to the lore, the Mamas and the Papas singer choked on a ham sandwich, dying as a result. In truth, there was actually a ham sandwich present in her room, which was found. Her body was found on July 29th, 1974 in London, but it wasn't the food that killed her. So basically, she had done a lot of. Sadly, she struggled with her weight. She was prone to a lot of fasts and binges, and this damage caused problems on her body, all compounded with drugs and alcohol abuse. Though there were no drugs found in her system, the latter was not known to her manager, Aaron Carr, who tried to head off assertions that Elliot died of a drug overdose. In order to explain Elliot's ultimate death, Carr told journalist Sue Cameron, "You've got to tell him that she died choking on a ham sandwich. You must go to your top writer and write that." He wanted that to come out instead of the idea that she had a drug overdose. So that's where the rumor comes from. She actually died of a heart attack.
Oh, well, poor Mama Cass. I mean, she lives in infamy because of the ham sandwich thing, when sadly it was something very much more human that took her.
Exactly. And so her real name is Ellen Cohen. She's professionally known as Mama Cass and later as Cass Elliot. She's an American singer and voice actress. And she was a member of the singing group, the Mamas and the Papas. After the group broke up, Elliot also released 5 solo albums. I didn't know she released that many albums, Tim.
I don't know. You find a lot of people are a lot more have a lot more music than you think that they ever would. But I don't know. I think it was a different era as well. I mean, now, yes, I said it's different era, but I mean, now people self-release stuff and put things on YouTube and put things on streaming platforms and stuff like that.
That's true.
But back then, I mean, if you was half decent, I mean, any record label would sign you and give you like multi-album deals and all kinds of stuff.
I guess that's true. And you only are going to hear the mainstream songs from different genres and different time periods. So, I mean, there's probably, for every one song you hear, there's about 10 you're not hearing, right?
So, sure. I mean, certainly these days, all you hear is the hits, but there is so much stuff out there from the past that's so good.
Exactly. So I thought this was sweet. Papa John Phillips said in his autobiography, her heart had just given out after 33 years, and that was some big heart. I thought that was a sweet little quote by him. And then I picked the song Monday and Dream a Little Dream of Me. Monday's a great song.
And the other one, Dream a Little Dream of Me, it's I'm trying to think, there's another great Mamas and Papas song that's still, again, on the tip of my my tongue.
I have it right here, probably. So their most common songs, I mean, there's probably somebody's California Dreaming, of course.
There you go.
And then go where you want to go. Monday is my favorite though, and it's probably the one that sticks with me the most. Once again, ironically, like I was saying, I was going, that's life. I think I go Monday a lot. Can't trust that day, which that's true. You can't really trust Mondays. But yeah, I loved the Mamas and the Papas. Sadly, I feel like they broke up pretty early, or I feel like they're like every other band, they're stop, we don't want to see each other ever again. I'm sure that there was something of that nature. But I do feel like they had a lot more music in them than what we got to see, because it feels like they were very limited. So, I mean, they like come out in 65 and they broke up by 69.
Exactly. Very, very small tenure. I mean, we even look at like the Beatles. I think the Beatles lasted 8 years or 9 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, you just assume it seems longer, right? And I think with the Beatles, it's because there were so many hits, hit after hit after hit. So it feels like, but when we did that one episode, well, when we did the Beatles episode, we talked about they would have like 7 hits in 1 year or something crazy. It was a really high number.
Oh, sure. And then they release an album, and then 9 months later, they release another album. I mean, these days it's unheard of. I mean, people are releasing albums, takes years between creating stuff like that.
Because every album now, every song now has 47 people on every track, Tim. I swear to you, you pull up an album now, and this is not to insult or whatever. I'm just saying, if I look at an album, let's say we talked about the Avril Lavigne album, you pull up one song and there will be 19 names listed in some way. And maybe it's partially because they don't want to get in trouble because they don't list somebody. People are so picky about that now. But it just feels like they have so many collaborations on one song. It's no wonder it takes them forever to get it out.
Well, do you know what? I looked into this because I was curious about this. And I think certainly in the realm of rap, hip hop, and dance, there are people out there that make beats, i.e. drum loops and stuff like that.
Makes
and
sense.
often they sell their beats to producers to make songs. And apparently it's very common that if you sell your beats to a producer, you are listed as a co-producer.
I mean, that makes sense. And that person should get credit. It's their beat, right? It's just weird to me. It feels like in the last maybe 10 to 15 years, that's probably gotten bigger. Because like if you look at a Mamas and Papas album, you're probably going to see like 5 people. You look at a modern day, like you were saying, R&B album, it's like 19 people per song. Just interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, that's always the joke, isn't it? It's like Bohemian Rhapsody, one songwriter, one producer. And it's like Katy Perry's Dark Horse, 14 songwriters and 19 producers.
Yeah. And that's not, me and Tim aren't saying that to insult people. You like what you like, they're artists. It's just interesting. But I think that probably does contribute to how many songs probably came out very quickly versus now. Because think about when you go into a meeting at work, Tim, the more people you have to give their opinion, the longer that meeting lasts.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
Period. Everybody knows it. Sometimes it's I've gotten to the point now where if I don't have to be in the meeting, don't put me in it and don't put a bunch of useless people in it, right? Just waste everybody's time. But anyway.
Well, I had a meeting. It was not a work meeting, but it was another kind of meeting. And I was very clear to try and steer it back to the topic at hand. And then there were some tangents flying. And I was use my steering skills, my work steering skills to steer it back to the topic at hand.
Tim, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And I was going to say, the meeting didn't take as long as everyone thought it was going to take.
Oh, yeah. And Tim knows, he's been in work meetings with me. If I'm leading that, what do I do, Tim? We get straight to the point. I am not a digressor. I will bring it right back in.
Oh, absolutely. We don't need to talk about why the vending machine doesn't accept cards anymore. We need to say, right, this, and this.
I'm on a mission. All right. One other thing that I will, before we move on, I just want to mention about the Mamas and the Papas. The harmonies, their harmonies when they sing together was one of the most fabulous sounds that you don't get very often. Their vocal arrangements, their sound, it layered so beautifully. And Mama Cass's voice is gorgeous and it works so well. Cause like you've got, Cass Elliot, John Phillips, Denny Doherty, but their layering of their sound it was kind of a good example of when you think of a wall of sound.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I have I think it's the best of the Mamas and the Papas or something that reliably came from a thrift shop around here. And you're right. You listen through that entire album and the vocal harmony and the vocal arrangements are absolutely first class.
So, yeah, that's just one thing I want to throw out there. So, yes, we're talking about their last meals, but we got to honor what they did. All right. So, next one is a very famous person that everybody will know, and sadly was taken too soon from us. It is Whitney Houston.
Yeah, it's such a shame about Whitney. Whitney is such a great singer. And it was, and I actually remember where I was when we lost Whitney. I was playing a gig at the Princeton, West Virginia Moose Lodge with a band that I used to be in. And I think we'd sound checked, and it was either we sound checked or it was in the break. No, it was in the break. And I wasn't running the disco at that time. And then Hannah sent me a text and she's like, Whitney Houston's dead. And I was like, what?
It's just so random when that happens. So, I will have to say, Tim, we lost a very cherished person this week for me. For those who don't know, because this is going to come out at a completely different time, speaking of people that you didn't know where you were when they passed, Aaron Carter passed away this week.
Oh, it's very sad.
So, for those who don't know, Joy was obsessed with both the Carter brothers as a child. They may have been, Nick Carter may have been her first crush, followed along with Aaron Carter. And sadly, he had struggled with some of the same things Whitney had recently. They haven't come out with what it was, but I mean, the parallels are kind of, they found him in a bathtub too.
Yes. So I mean, it's so sad when people are taken, especially at such young ages as well.
I mean, yeah, he was about my age, if not my age. So, and for those who don't know, I'm going to be 33 this year. So he was, because that's the thing is I grew up with him. And every year during the Christmas season, there's this one episode of Lizzie McGuire. So Hilary Duff and Aaron Carter were like the couple when I was little. So there's this one episode of Lizzie McGuire, which is a TV show Hilary Duff was in on Disney. And Aaron Carter comes and records his song Candy, and it's a holiday theme. And so every Christmas, that's what I put on. It's one of my go-tos every Christmas season. I have to watch the Aaron Carter one because it's so nostalgia for me. So when we're talking about Whitney, I just thought I wanted to make that parallel and talk about how sad it was. But sadly, it was when they said they found him in a bathtub. That's all my brain went back to, is that's how they found Whitney Houston. Yeah, and isn't it with Whitney Houston? Because hadn't her daughter die around the same time, and her mother, and it was like the whole Houston family gone. And her daughter was, I think, found in a bathtub too. That was another parallel they talked about. Yeah, it was just a lot of it. I do not care for Bobby Brown personally. His music we've talked about. I do like some New Edition songs and different things like that. But I mean, he went through a lot through all that because they lost a lot of people very quickly. I do have my favorite Whitney Houston story, though. What's that? So I think it was 2009, 2010, when that Icelandic volcano went off. Yeah. Do you remember that? And they suspended air travel in Europe for a period of time. It was about 3 or 4 weeks or something like that. And they didn't know whether it was safe to fly with all this volcanic dust and stuff like that. And Whitney Houston was on tour. She had played a bunch of dates in the UK. I think she played London, and then she played Birmingham NEC, I think. And the next date, she was playing Dublin in Ireland. And of course, being Whitney Houston, being the diva that she was, she probably had a private jet or first class flight, something like that, with an entourage of people, and only the best for Whitney. Well, of course, she had to get to Ireland, and there was no flights. So, and also there was not a lot of transport options because everyone was traveling and couldn't fly anymore. So apparently they got her on a car ferry. Now, have you ever been on a car ferry? I have. Yeah. So it's normally a stinky old boat that you drive your car and or a coach onto. And then everybody goes out onto the decks, and there's probably a really poor quality canteen serving greasy food. And it's cold. And it's cold. And there's like kids running around, and it's the kind of thing that your average person would go on because it's cheaper. It's the cheapest option. Yeah. Certainly your VIP types typically are not on a car ferry. So apparently people were thoroughly entertained by seeing Whitney and her entourage on like this ferry going across to Ireland. When she was one of those people that, even though she did get that diva reputation, they talked about she was very down to earth. So that doesn't surprise me. So we have not named what her we haven't really named much of anything. So Whitney, for those who don't know, for some reason, if there's someone listening, we're not judging. We just want to give you some basics. She is an American singer and actress, nicknamed The Voice. She's one of the best-selling artists of all times, with a sale of over 20 million records worldwide. And she was in a few different movies and stuff. But her final food was, and I thought this was random, it was a hamburger French fries, and a turkey sandwich. So, in the hours after the singer Houston's death on February 11, 2012, a photo was leaked from the Beverly Hills hotel where she passed. The photo showed what is believed to be Houston's last meal, one she ordered from room service earlier that day. The items on the tray included a hamburger, fries, a turkey sandwich, champagne, and beer. Sounds like it's a meal for two, honestly.
Yeah, or maybe someone's just getting a load of stuff for later.
That's true. I mean, have you ever heard the theory on why a lot of times when artists pass, they're not home, they're always in a hotel? So there's a psychology behind it. So when you do a lot of substance use, and even if you've never done, like, you're not into drugs, but you've drank, at home and drank at a party, somebody else's house, you tend to get drunker when you're farther away. A lot of people think it's like the atmosphere, your brain's just, you're happy, you're having fun, but there's actually science behind it. So usually people who do drugs or alcohol very often are ritualistic. So they set out their supplies. I don't know what you do, but whatever you do in those situations, the body gets used to, and it will build itself up. There's a term for it, and I can't remember the name of it. It will basically build a tolerance to it, and it prepares itself, like your heart and your lungs and everything prepare themselves for what's about to happen. But if you break out of that and you're in a hotel, or if you're at a friend's house and you do it, the body doesn't have time to prepare itself naturally. And so that's why what would normally kill you, what you take every day at home, can kill you if you go outside of the house and do it.
Okay.
That's why a lot of times they're found in, like, it's always, you just assume it's because musicians are traveling a lot and things like that. But that's actually, there's a science behind it.
There you go. I didn't know that.
Human body does a lot of things, and Joy studied psychology in college. So there you go.
There we are.
So the songs I tried to pick were two of her not like amazing, the songs everybody knows. I picked It's Not Right, But It's Okay, and My Love Is Your Love.
Yeah, they later Whitney hits.
They are. Go ahead.
I was going to say, because I mean, my relationship with Whitney is the Whitney and the Whitney Houston albums. I think very early on in her career, I Want to Dance with Somebody, So Emotional, Didn't We Always Have It All those tracks.
I will say I love I get so emotional. That's probably my favorite of what you just said. But it's like, it's not right, but it's okay. That's the song. Have you ever heard that, Tim?
I have heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, this would have been late. I tried to pick not the best hits, like the ones everybody knows. This would have been in 1998. It's My Love Is Your Love was the name of the album. It did win a Grammy for Best Female R&B Performance. And it really was when she kind of stepped into that R&B life. Now, I'm going to make a Glee reference, as one does all the time, one who is Joy. There's an episode of Glee where they did a Whitney episode, because of course they would. And there's a part where the guy's boyfriend was cheating on him. So he was talking to his boyfriend was cheating on him. And so then they went back to Glee class, and they were all performing Whitney songs. And he does It's Not Right, But It's Okay. And he does it as like a jab, because the guy's like, I wasn't cheating on you. I was just talking to the person. It's not right, but it's okay. So he sings it. And it's hilarious because no one else in the room knows why they're like having this obvious banter back and forth while he's singing it. And the facial expressions from every person was so funny, because they just keep looking over at him. They're like, what the heck is going on right now? And if you watch it, I laugh every time I watch it, because it's obviously over the top and dramatic. But everybody if you ever had a situation where you could tell something's heated between two people, but you don't know why, it's like that. And it's so funny because they zoom in on each Glee member's face, and they're all like kind of just like side-eyeing him, and they're singing, but they're looking back and forth. It's one of the best like comic like tension moments that Glee did. So that's probably why this song sticks out to me. And if you're not into Glee, I'm sorry, guys, I am.
I've never seen Glee. I know what it is, but I've never seen it.
I mean, it's literally it's a musical, but in TV form. So what they did is it's about a Glee club, and like every episode they have a different theme or things that come up, very high school-esque. But like they did a Britney episode, they did a Whitney episode. Certain episodes were dedicated. One time they did the Rumors album, and then like famous artists would be on there. Like they had so many people who were actual musicians, because a lot of them ended up going it, and a lot of them either were already stars or becoming stars, because they really did have good voices. Yes, it's cliche. There is kind of a weird hex over it, because things keep happening to the member of that were on Glee, but we're not going to talk about it. That's dark. But anyway, I love Glee. And I just realized the other song I picked, My Love Is Your Love, was also in that episode, and it was sung between two people. So maybe that's why I picked it.
Oh, well, there we are. The question I have for you is, was you ever a fan of Fame, the TV show?
I watched a few episodes, but I wasn't as big on it. I know what it is. I would have, it just for some reason didn't stick with me as well.
I tried to find it. I really wanted to watch it. And I think the first or second season was released on DVD, but it's incredibly hard to find. And that really surprises me because when it was out, it was huge.
Yeah, I mean, I know what it is. And I even went back and watched it. Where I watched it, I can't tell you, but it was, I mean, the 80s, New York, high school. It's a predecessor to Glee, really.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same principle. But I mean, I think it wasn't quite as contemporary. Well, we'll say that, but it's not like it had the artists of the day involved in it.
I think the reason, I think that's why, is it was a little bit more contemporary. And when Glee came out, I was probably like 18. You know what I mean? It would have been right up my alley. But I've watched bits and pieces of Fame. And I know, like, the famous the famous theme song and everything. But yeah, it's like, inspiring dancers. There's Coco. I remember her, Danny, Leroy. And it was a little bit more dance, though, I think, driven than singing driven. So that probably contributed because Lord knows I'm not going to be competing in any dance competitions anytime soon, Tim.
I don't think I'd let you.
I'd probably break a hip. To be fair, I was in show choir, so I can do a basic box step, but anything more than that, you're on your own. All right. So back to our topic at hand. Another famous artist who passed away, Elvis Presley. I think you've heard of him.
I have indeed. I've actually, with my own eyes, seen the floor. Well, not the floor, but the ceiling of the floor at Graceland where it happened.
So, with that being said, just a little bit of history in case someone out there is listening is not familiar. Elvis Aaron Presley was his full name, but mostly, he just went by Elvis professionally. He's an American singer and actor, dubbed the King of Rock and Roll. He's also regarded as one of the most significant culture figures of the 20th century. Gosh. So, I mean, he really is. He's iconic. I don't know anyone, if you said Elvis to them, they can't picture it. But what he was eating was ice cream and cookies. Elvis spent the day of August 15th, 1977 with his daughter, Lisa Marie, at his home in Graceland in Tennessee. The singer, known for being prone to excess, ate one of his favorite meals for dinner that night, spaghetti and meatballs. Presley stayed up all night and asked for some ice cream and cookies around 4 a.m. He reportedly served four Guys, I can't talk. He reportedly served, scoops of ice cream. It was 4. That's what I was trying to say. 4 scoops of ice cream. That wasn't supposed to be a tongue twister, but it became one. And 6 chocolate chip cookies, which he followed up with some racquetball, which I thought was random. Like at 4 a.m., you're getting 4 scoops of ice cream, 6 chocolate chip cookies, and then you go play racquetball.
Well, I can tell you, I have been in that racquetball court because I've been to Graceland a number of times, and the racquetball court now has memorabilia in it. Most noticeably, those white suits he wore in Vegas.
So basically, and this is just known, everybody knows, he went to the restroom. Before going, he took sleeping pills. This prompted his then girlfriend, Ginger, to tell him not to fall asleep. I don't know why, but I guess because he's going to the bathroom, she's like, don't fall asleep while you're in there, right? Yeah. And then Alden found Elvis on the bathroom floor during the early afternoon of August 16, 1977. He was taken to the hospital and pronounced dead soon after. Now, I picked 2 songs. I try not to, pick like the most cliche songs, but I picked Don't Be Cruel and Return to Sender.
Yeah, both of them stone cold Elvis classics. Return to Sender, Address Unknown, No Such Number, No Such Zone.
That one, when I check the mail, I sing it. When I go check my mailbox, I'm like, I'll be like, send it. I just think that's so clever. Like the no such, but where he's going back and forth, he's like, no such code, no such number, whatever, all he says. I think it's super clever writing. And Don't Be Cruel. It's just classic Elvis. Also, Don't Be Cruel. It's a really good message.
Exactly. And both of those are from early on in Elvis's career. I mean, as you get later onto his career, it's like the Vegas Elvis, you get Wonder of You and an American Trilogy and all that kind of stuff.
And I had no idea that trying to say he ate 4 scoops of ice cream and 6 cookies was going to become a tongue twister, but it was. And then speaking of it, didn't Bobby Brown do a version of Don't Be Cool?
Yeah, different song though.
Oh, it's not the same song.
No,
I just remember that name associated, or that name of that song with him.
No, I'd imagine whoever wrote the song, it was a homage to the Elvis song, but it's very much a different song. It's not the same song. I would say though about Elvis and his sad demise at Graceland. I may have told this story before, but they don't let you upstairs at Graceland if you go on the tour, and they will tell you that it's because Elvis was a private person and the upstairs of the house was where his bedroom was, and he didn't entertain guests up there. The real reason is that upstairs is the toilet he died on, and they don't want it to become a shrine. And as you walk into the house, as you start the tour and you walk in the house, I think his mother's bedroom, I believe, is on the right-hand side, and then the dining room is on the left-hand side. I think it's been a couple of years since I've been there. Anyhow, you walk into that kind of lobby area. If you look up, that is the ceiling there. The bathroom where that all happened is exactly above that.
Yeah. I've heard that too, and I don't know. I think it should be kept off. I don't feel like people should be in there to begin with.
It would be in very poor taste, incredible poor taste. I mean, I would say if you have the opportunity to go to Graceland, go to Graceland, because one thing that's very shocking is not the right word, but it's eye-opening, is how incredibly small Graceland is. I mean, like Elvis was Elvis Presley. He was the king of rock and roll. He had riches beyond anyone's dreams at that time. And I know people who have houses bigger than that.
Yeah, it was interesting. That was one of those things that stuck out to me too, because you hear about Graceland like you hear about Disney World, right? And in your mind, it seems very grandiose. And he's a grandiose person. Think about the clothes the man wore when he got into his Vegas kind of residency and different things like that. So yeah, I can agree with you in that. It was shocking, but that's probably just because I feel like our brains just assume someone of that caliber would live in the biggest mansion possible.
That's true. And also you have to look at the time. I mean, maybe at the time that was a massive mansion. It is a big house. I mean, it's far bigger than the house I live in.
True.
But I mean, but as I said, I know people in this area that have a house that's bigger than Graceland.
Yeah, I do too. The house I'm in is probably, because my house is a duplex, so the part I'm in, but if you put the whole house together, it's a pretty big house. Still smaller than Graceland, but it's a pretty big house. So I guess you're right.
That's true. And as we all know, Elvis is laid to rest in the grounds of Graceland.
So just something I thought was interesting about him when I was researching. So there's a thing about him having, perfect pitch. You've heard that many times before. And so one thing I thought, he had a vocal range of 2.5 octaves, which, we talk about, these artists who have like 6, and really most people only have 1, 2, 3 octaves that they sing in and sound good in. Once you start expanding past that, it becomes, you can do it, but it's not what you sound naturally good at, with the exception of someone like Mariah Carey. She's, or Christina Aguilera. They're the one-offs, but that's typically. So what was interesting, though, is because he did have perfect pitch, he was willing, some of his songs, when you sung them live, he thought sounded better if you sung off key, because of the kind of like songs he was singing, the kind of poppy kind of sound and having conversation. So he actually would sing some of his songs off key.
Interesting.
On purpose. And they were art. It was specifically picked for different songs, but I just thought that was interesting, and I'd never heard it. And the other thing is I've heard that they actually, sped up his songs. So like his recordings are sped up because they thought they sounded better. Have you ever heard that, Tim?
Yeah, and that's something that I've heard on pop songs throughout the years. Sometimes you get a track, and if you speed it up, it will sound brighter, and it's obviously faster. I mean, like now you can change pitch without the speed and change speed without changing the pitch. But back then you would speed the tape up and it would make it sound brighter, as I said, and it would also just make it a little more peppy. Now, one example of that is When I'm 64. When I'm 64 by the Beatles is actually sped up. And if you go back to the anthology, they have the original non-sped up version.
Huh. I mean, that makes sense. I hadn't heard it specifically in relation to Elvis. So what they're saying is Elvis, because he had a deep voice and was more adult sounding. Neither Sam Phillips or Corner Parker, who did like his, producing, liked it very much. So they would speed up his songs to make them sound more happy and peppy, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go, everybody. And also, he didn't. One of his biggest hits, "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" Apparently, he couldn't sing it live. Like, he would never sing it live because he thought he sounded terrible. Everybody. That's probably more in his head than in real life. But anyway. All right. So the next one is we're hitting all the big names tonight, Tim. John Lennon.
No.
Speaking of the Beatles. So John Lennon, his full name is John Winston Ono Lennon, was an English singer, songwriter, musician, peace activist who received worldwide fame as a founder, co-singer, co-lead vocalist, and rhythm guitarist for the Beatles. So what he was eating was a corned beef sandwich.
Very classic British thing to eat. He was in the Dakota in Central Park West in New York City. And, the world of food, even in 1980, 81, when was it?
Yeah, 81, I thought, right?
Yeah. So the entire, even in 1981, it's the crossroads of the world. You can go out to New York City and you can get anything. Any kind of food from any corner of the world would have been available to you, even in 81. And what's John Lennon eating? A corned beef sandwich. That is classic British food. I do think it kind of meets the New York deli thing too, though. So it's like, good point. But it gets funnier because he was also drinking hot tea. But so John Lennon was shot and killed by it is 80. Mark David Chapman in New York City on December 8th. 1980. I was thinking it was 81 too, Tim. I told you wrong. In the hours leading up to his death, Lennon stopped at Stage Deli for lunch, one that featured a corned beef sandwich and hot tea. He then went to the recording studio and worked with Yoko Ono on the song Walking on Thin Ice. As Lennon and Ono wrapped up, the latter said, "Shall we go and have dinner before we go home?" According to Ono, Lennon replied, "No, let's just go home because I want to see Sean, their son, after he goes to sleep." So there you go. That's kind of sad when you think about it, because if maybe they'd stop to eat, maybe, but you can't sit here and think. You could probably maybe yourself all day, right? Maybe if the stoplight was red, maybe if this, but sadly, Chapman was just a very deranged person. Yeah, I mean, it is so sad, and I remember that being on TV. I was 6 years old in 1980, and I actually remember the news reports of that. Oh, I'm sure. Well, and I'm sure it was like huge in the UK too. It was on the front page of every newspaper. Every news report was talking about it. It was a huge thing, and even now, it makes you wonder what would have happened. Would the Beatles have got back together? I mean, you don't know. I mean, you would want to think they at least get to do like the Jacksons do one or two of those crazy reunion concerts, right? If nothing else, just like that kind of fun. Yeah, I mean, the Beatles did sort of get back together when they did that Free as a Bird for the Beatles anthology. They had that tape that Yoko gave them that had Free as a Bird on it. And then they all got the remaining members, because George Harrison was alive at the time. And they wrote that song. And it was almost like John was in the studio because they were working on stuff he'd recorded and stuff like that. But I mean, they never performed as the Beatles after they broke up. Yeah, I mean, that kind of is, but it kind of, it would be, like the Jacksons did like 3 or 4 of those concerts where they got back together and that was all they're talking about, the Jacksons back together and that kind of thing. And the Motowns, all that stuff. So that would be what you would hope, if nothing else, even if they didn't put any new music out, you could have had those fun moments. But sadly, that was taken away from us. So I tried to pick 2 songs that were just John Lennon solo career versus the Beatles. I mean, me and Tim have probably said every Beatles song till we're blue in the face in this podcast. So I went with Whatever Gets You Through the Night, which is one I love, which is a 70s album that John Lennon was on. And then Working Class Hero is my go-to favorite John Lennon song. Yeah, Working Class Hero has been covered by so many people. Covered by Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day in the more contemporary time. But certainly, Whatever Gets You Through the Night. I mean, that is really, it's got saxes on it. It's kind of funky. It's a great song. It's one that I don't know, if I'm being honest, people associate with John Lennon. I feel like if you didn't know it was John Lennon, you might not even know, because it doesn't really have his vibe. No, and the other one is Mind Games as well from that same kind of era.
Yeah, that was a good one too. I didn't even think about that. But I mean, the whatever gets you through the night, it's all right. It's all right. That vibe is so perfect to me. What was that band that came out and a lot? They did like one or two songs before, sadly, they passed away and people were dubbing them as the second Beatles. Oh, what was that band? I'm giving it a Google on air, guys.
Well, there was a band called Klaatu, which were a Canadian band who famously were the originators of calling occupants of interplanetary craft. And some people said they were the Beatles getting back together because they sounded so similar. But which is the one that you're thinking of?
I'm trying to think of how I should write this. It would have been in the 70s. All right, the beat song.
Joy is giving it a Goog live on the air.
The Beatles. I'm just going to put the Beatles reincarnated band. I'm trying to think of how you would Google that. It's going to come to me and I'm going to yell it out like Stevie Nicks in a minute. And it's not even going to matter because I'm probably not going to find it based off of that. Oh my gosh, I just got a Reddit result that says, my boss is the Beatles reincarnated. That's not the band, everybody. Sadly, they passed away. All right. Band that sounds like the Beatles.
You never know. That might do it.
Who's the Kings, the Doors, the Birds? No. There was this one band, and they only had like one or two songs. It would have been in the late 70s. And they had this style of the Beatles. And when I figured out, everybody, I'm going to say it, but something happened, and members of them passed away before they ever got to become largely famous. And I know Phil is probably screaming at his because it's probably something super obvious that I'm not coming up with. All right, I'm going to think about it, and when it comes to me, Tim, I'm just going to yell it out because it's going to drive me insane until I remember. But we will move along, so we're not here all night. All right, Jimi Hendrix. Heard of him? Yes.
Guitar player, yes.
Yeah, I think he plays the guitar. He was an American guitarist, singer, and songwriter. Although his mainstream career spanned only 4 years, he's widely regarded as one of the most influential electric guitar historists. Yes, guys, he was a historist. Guitar players in history and the most celebrated musician of the 21st century. I didn't know that. I guess it would be the 20th century, not really the 21st, but that's what they wrote on Wikipedia, guys. Sorry. So Jimi Hendrix, his food that he was eating, a tuna salad sandwich. So I don't know if they just mean like a tuna fish sandwich. I guess they mean tuna salad because it was mixed with mayo. Not that matters.
Yeah, tuna salad would suggest that it's mixed with mayonnaise. Can I tell you, I don't like tuna. I mean, I wouldn't eat it now anyway, but I did not like tuna.
But you weren't a big seafood fan, were you, Tim?
No, not really. I remember one time I caught a flight from Copenhagen back to Heathrow, and in the Copenhagen airport, certainly at the time in the mid 2000s, in the departure terminal, I think there was only one place you could get food, and I got there. I forget when it was. It was on a Sunday or it was late or something like that, and everything was closed. And I think the only thing that was open was like a newsagent, and I bought a bag of potato chips or crisps for our UK listeners.
Yeah, you got to get it correct for them, Tim.
It was an SAS flight, Scandinavian Airlines, and they always had good food. So I get on the flight and I'm thinking, I'm starving. And I thought, do you know what? This is fine. I'm going to have some high quality Scandinavian Airlines food. And they bring the food round. And what was it? A tuna sandwich.
And Tim was like, darn it. So I figured out the band. It come to me while Tim was telling his tuna fish sandwich, everybody. I'm not going to script it out. It's Badfinger.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Everybody thought that the song, no matter what, sounded like the Beatles. Which it does. It really does.
Well, yeah, because they're, no matter what, they're big songs written by Paul McCartney.
Yes, that's the one I was trying to think of. And sadly, I can't remember the details, but a couple of the members passed away or something happened. But yeah, that was the band, everybody. Now that it's completely not relevant and you're thinking about tuna fish sandwiches, it came to me. I was Googling it and I tried that time. So, what was it? I put bands dubbed as the second Beatles. So that's how I found it. Finally got to Badfinger. It's one of those ones, though, like, I was like, it's stuck. I can't think of it. All right. So back to the tuna salad sandwich. Now that we established that it's tuna salad, not tuna. So Hendrix's girlfriend picked the guitarist up from a party in London the night of September 17th, 1970, around 3 a.m. On the 18th, she made them both tuna salad sandwich. Okay, I like tuna salad, but I have never thought after a party at 3 a.m. that's what I want to eat. Not once has that ever came up.
Well, it depends. See, the rock and roll types, they live a different schedule to the likes of you and I.
It's true.
So they probably woke up at 7 p.m. or something, and then they went out to their party and they got home at, what time, did you say what time it was?
3 a.m.
Yeah, 3 a.m. So that's like an early night for them. They get back and I think, I'll have a bit of lunch. What you got? Oh, I'll make a tuna salad sandwich.
So random. All right. About an hour later, Hendrix said he couldn't sleep. He asked his girlfriend for a sleeping pill. According to her statement, she didn't give him any drugs. And when she woke up the next morning, Hendrix appeared to have fallen asleep on his own. He was still asleep when she went to buy cigarettes that morning of September 18th. But when she got back, she noticed he had vomited. Unable to get him to respond, she called an ambulance, but Hendrix passed away when they had arrived. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. Their schedule is probably way different than mine. And I will say, for our UK friends, you guys can stay out a lot longer than us Americans. You guys will say the night is early and it's 5 a.m. It's true.
I mean, I'd forgotten about that business until we started getting into Zoom calls over the COVID era. It's fair to say.
Tim is now on the American schedule.
Tim's also on the almost 50 schedule as well.
Fair enough. He still knows how to rock and roll, everybody, though. Don't let him play games.
Exactly.
So the songs I picked Foxy Lady and Purple Haze, which both are kind of cliche songs. But to be fair, Jimi Hendrix did a lot in a long time, but he didn't have a lot of hits because it was such a short-lived career.
Sure. And I will say Foxy Lady reminds me of Wayne's World.
Oh, you're right. I didn't think about that until you said it. I feel like that song's been used in probably about 1 million movies, though.
Oh, absolutely.
And what is your opinion on? Okay, this is controversial. Don't come for me, internet. Some people really hate his version of the national anthem.
Technically, I mean, if you look at it from a technical perspective, it's terrible.
Yes,
it doesn't really. It's sloppy. It's out of tune, and it is not a traditional reading of the national anthem. If you compare, say, like, I don't know, Nita Strauss, who we've spoken about before, who plays the national anthem at football games, or Zakk Wylde has played the national anthem at a football game, and I think Kirk Hammett from Metallica has done the same. Their readings tend to be more true to, you put some flair in it, but it's more true to the original song. If you actually look at it from a technical perspective, the Hendrix version is sloppy.
Fair.
But it is encapsulating a moment in American history, especially with the Vietnam War and all that kind of stuff going on. It is more passion than performance. Well, more passion than technical performance, shall we say.
And it kind of goes into what we were saying about Elvis earlier, and I think it's true of, like, writers. So you know how, like, they say you have to know the rules to break the rules well? So, like, a writer can write a book, and let's say they use a lot of British slang or something in it, and they do it so well that it works, but it's technically against grammar rules, but it's to convey a message. If you know the rules, you can break the rules, right? Sure. Or if you're a musician who knows what the pitch should be, but you're trying to convey a certain sound, you can go off pitch. You can make choices as long as you know what you're doing and you're doing them well. And in that situation, he was actively choosing to do it that way, like you're saying, to convey a message. It's supposed to be a cry. It's supposed to be a wail. It's supposed to be intense. At least that's the way I've always taken it. But I do know there is a camp of people now who talk about, like, it wasn't as good as everybody made it out to be. But that's kind of, I feel like that's always going to happen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of rock musicians of that era, if you especially listen to live performances, they sometimes sound a little bit rough around the edges. But you don't have the advantages of electronic tuners. You don't have the advantages of going back and fixing stuff and good monitoring and decent stage volume that's not absurd. There's a lot of technological advances that have come along in the world of music that people are used to stuff sounding great all the time.
Yes, and I agree with that. And I think that Also, at a concert like that where there's multiple artists back to back, you know what I mean, Tim? You don't have a lot of time to do a sound check. You don't have a lot of, it's like go, 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 go.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
plus
really a
everybody at
situation.
Woodstock was doing acid and stuff, and it was none of those performances are technically great, but it's the era. It's Woodstock, you know.
It's just iconic, is what it is. All right. So I have three more people. Do we have time for that, or should we do two, Tim? I don't know where we're at.
Let's do two. Why don't we do two?
Well, I'm going to pick two. I'm going to pick an artist that is just a personal favorite of mine. We're going to go with Michael Jackson.
Okay.
So Michael Joseph Jackson was an American singer, songwriter, dancer, and philanthropist. Guys, that was real good way to say that, guys. He gave money to people. Let's say it the easy way. God, I don't know what's wrong with me tonight, but I can't speak. Dubbed the King of Pop, he is regarded as one of the most significant culture figures of the 20th century, which I can agree with, of course. So the last thing Michael Jackson ate was ahi tuna and a salad. So Jackson's personal chef was preparing the singer's lunch in the kitchen. A traditional meal of healthy foods like turkey breast and vegetables is what he would normally do. Today he decided he wanted to do tuna. I don't know why they felt the need to tell us that, but it was important. She didn't know that Jackson was already dead, having overdosed on a sedative. So I guess he didn't actually eat it. Oh, let me restate this. She must have been making him the turkey breast and vegetables. So she was making him that, but she came back and said the night before he had the tuna. She was in the process of making. That's why they felt the need to tell us, guys. I should have paid attention to what I was saying before I spoke. Anyway, so she actually must have been one of the ones who found him. She didn't know Jackson was already dead, having overdosed on a sedative in his nearby bedroom. The last meal Jackson consumed was from the same chef the night before, and it was the tuna, salad, and a glass of carrot and orange juice. I've never known anyone to drink carrots and orange together, but probably really healthy for you. According to Chase, he smiled, put his hands together for a prayer. He said, "Thank you, God bless," ate it. And so then when she was going back to do his next meal, she was bringing him turkey breast and vegetables. That is when he was found. There you go, everybody. I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that at all. I mean, I hadn't really looked much into the sad death of Michael Jackson, to be honest with you. I mean,
I know what happened, but I didn't really look into the details.
Exactly. I will say one thing about Michael Jackson that will probably be up by the time this episode comes out, and it's already up on Tidal. If you have Tidal, I don't have Tidal, but I know a few people that do. They are 4K releasing some of his classic videos. Eat It, and the one that everyone's very excited about. I said eat it, I meant beat it.
Beat it. I was like, I knew what he meant. I wasn't going to correct him, but we just went with it.
It's because I've been watching Weird Al recently. Beat It. And they're actually going to be releasing a 4K version of Thriller.
Oh, well, I mean, that would be nice. I have a 4K TV, so I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, because the version that's on YouTube is terrible. It's come off a videotape. I mean, the thing was shot on film, and the version that they have on YouTube has come off a commercial videotape, and it's all right. But I mean, it's not great. But I've seen clips of the actual 4K version of it, and it's so crystal clear.
That's
I said
awesome.
it's currently available on Tidal, and I heard that it's coming to YouTube soon.
So me and Tim were discussing this a few episodes ago about the whole, like, the quality. And me and Hannah both said we kind of thought the quality was on purpose. Tim was in the camp that he didn't think about it that way. We thought it was supposed to be like an old school horror movie, and that's why they made it that bad. But now I went back and rewatched it after we talked about it, and I think Tim's right. I think it's just bad quality.
Yeah, I mean, it was shot on film, which is perfect for making a super high definition master of it. But what's happened, it was shot on film, it was transferred to videotape, and then it was shown on TV stations and stuff like that before high definition TV was a thing. And then that version was uploaded to YouTube 15 years ago, and it was seen as fine at the time. Now everybody has high definition screens. The screens on phones are great. Everyone has a 4K TV, and it just doesn't cut it.
Well, there you go, everybody. Something for us to look forward to. So the songs I picked were Rock With You, which is a favorite of mine, and then PYT.
Yeah, one from Off the Wall and one from Thriller. PYT, Janet Jackson is one of the PYTs.
I have heard that. I will say Off the Wall is my personal favorite. My favorite Michael time was the 70s when he kind of embraced his kind of disco age, I guess you could say. It was very disco-y, very upbeat, because he went for, and then later he went into his like darker kind of thing we've talked about, but like Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, Rock With You, Working Day and Night, Get on the Floor. I can name everything on that album because Off the Wall is me the most iconic, and it transcends him from the Jacksons to his own artists.
Sure. And like you say, it's very much more disco than Thriller ever was. And Thriller gets all the attention, and for good reason, but Off the Wall, I think if I had to pick one off the shelf, and I have both, I'd probably pick Off the Wall.
Well, and you have to think about it. Stevie Wonder did songwriting contributions on Off the Wall. Paul McCartney wrote some pieces for Off the Wall. Like, there's so many other, and then he penned, I think 3 of the tracks were written by Michael himself. It's the perfect balance between the Jacksons and solo Michael for me.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely.
And as always, every time we talk about Michael Jackson, I'll sit here and talk about it for 20 days. So this one was handpicked for a listener because I may have said I was not super familiar with this band, and we got a barrage of tweets about it. It's the lead singer of INXS.
Michael Hutchence.
So Michael Hutchence. So our listener, who is from Australia, Megan, she kindly commented about I needed to up my INXS knowledge because I wasn't familiar. So I wanted to put this one on here. So Michael Hutchence, he was an American. He wasn't American, everybody. He was Australian. Musician, singer, songwriter, and actor. He co-founded the rock band INXS, which sold over 75 million worldwide records. He's inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame. Is that an Australian thing? I don't know.
Yeah, it's ARIA awards are like Grammys.
Makes sense. In 2001, and he is the lead singer and lyricist for INXS he was the lead singer and lyricist from INXS from 1997 until his death. So they were still out there trucking, apparently. So I thought this is random. I've never heard of anybody eating this. He was eating spicy crab meat in potato skins. That
sounds like something that you would order from room service. Because that doesn't sound like something that someone would typically make. Though I'm sure there are some people there that love that stuff. But it's the sort of thing you see on a room service menu or in a hotel restaurant.
So it wasn't for room service, but it was close to a hotel, Tim. You're very close to the mark. So basically what it says is, the lead singer of INXS, Hutchence, was on tour in Sydney, Australia in November of 1997. He spent the day of November 21st rehearsing, reportedly in great spirits. His father was set to join him for dinner that night, a meal that also included his stepmother. They went to an Indian restaurant in Edgecliff, not far from the hotel, the Ritz-Carlton. While at dinner, the singer was in a jovial mood, joking with the restaurant staff and chain smoking until late into the night. He had ordered an entree that included crab meat mixed with chili, ginger, and onions, all of which were then stuffed into potato skins. After the group was done eating, he had several drinks at the bar before going back to his hotel room. He reportedly made 7 calls on the phone, including to room service, and was found dead in his room on noon, November 22nd.
Yeah, and I it's very sad because, I mean, he was such an icon, such a great singer, performer, songwriter, etc. And I mean, his death was purely accidental, from what I understand. Yeah.
So what I got from it, I'll read it to you guys because I did read up on the death. Because this is a person I'm not super familiar with, but I'm trying to become familiar with because I was told I needed to. So basically, he was found dead in his hotel room. Actress Kim Wilson was the last person to see him alive when she visited him. Apparently she had been there. They both gave her and another person gave police statements on the phone calls they exchanged with him on his day. However, they did not volunteer their phone records. Yates' statement on the 26th November indicated that she had informed Hutchence of the Jedoff girls' custody hearing being adjourned. I don't know about that until the 17th, which meant Yates would not be able to bring him Tigger and Jedoff girls to Australia to visit. According to Yates, Hutchence was frightened and couldn't stand a more minute without his baby. He was terribly upset. I don't know what to do without seeing them, blah, blah, blah. And so basically from there, after the autopsy and coronal, is that how you say that?
Coroner.
Well, it's a coronal because it's like a coronal inquest of New South
Coroners.
Wales. Yes, something like that. Presented the report. Basically, it was analysis he had indicated the presence of alcohol, cocaine, Prozac, and prescription drugs, including in his coroner's hand and specific considered suggestions of an accidental death, coupled with the fact that there was no suicide note left. And based on the evidence that proceeded, there was no way to say that he was trying to kill himself. It just sounds like a bad combination of things.
Exactly. Yeah, he was with Paula Yates at the time, and Paula Yates.
See, I didn't know that whole story with the custody battle.
Yeah, Paula Yates was the ex-wife of Bob Geldof. I don't know if you knew that.
That's why they kept saying Geldof girls to Australia to visit. No, I didn't know any of that.
And do you know where they met?
Where's that?
There used to be a television program on Channel 4 called The Big Breakfast, and it had quite a cult following. Most of the breakfast time TV shows in the UK were kind of standard magazine programs, maybe kind of stuffy type thing. And Channel 4 was a little bit more out there than standard broadcast TV, and they had this breakfast program called The Big Breakfast, and a lot of stars got their break on The Big Breakfast. And they always did stuff that was just a little bit more wacky. And Paula Yates had a segment on there called On the Bed with Paula. The interesting thing about The Big Breakfast, it actually came from a real house. The production company bought a real house, turned it into a TV studio. So when they used to do different segments, they used to be in different rooms of the house. So I think it was after 9 o'clock. In the morning, Paula Yates was on there, and she had this On the Bed with Paula. So you would go up to the bedroom, you'd lay on the bed with Paula, and then she would interview you. And she interviewed Michael Hutchence, and that is where they met.
Well, there you go, everybody. We left on a very positive note of their romance. Well, apparently at this point, he was upset he wasn't going to be able to see his children, which is sad. Of course, that's only one person's story. We don't know for sure, but I will say the coroner's report really does seem to indicate it was an accident.
Yeah, very sad. Something that could be avoided. Incredibly sad. All of us wish that we could be going out and seeing INXS on tour, but sadly, that's never going to happen. I mean, INXS continued after Michael Hutchence, and they had that Rockstar INXS thing, but I don't know. It's like Queen without Freddie. It's just not the same.
Agreed. All right, Tim, do you have anything for the people?
I just have one comment.
What's that?
I may have put this on the internet this week. I just want to say, the calendar starts on a Monday, not a Sunday.
Okay. Well, with those wise words, we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.